Hey everybody, it is Wednesday, June 4th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast here. I'm Moshe Nunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to.
And Moshe, you're on location in Arkansas today. What's going on?
Jill, I am here for their big annual meetings, the Shareholders Associates meetings at Walmart, Bentonville, Arkansas, world headquarters for Walmart. A number of traditional media outlets here. We are one of the new media outlets here. We might be one of the only ones, actually. So look forward to some headlines from effectively America's biggest private employer. Walmart, just by the nature of how large it is, has a pretty good gauge for the economy, what consumers are feeling. And of course, it comes against the backdrop, and we'll discuss it in this podcast, of the tariffs and prices going up due to the tariffs, particularly on China. So expect a lot of major headlines out of Arkansas the next couple of days, and we'll be here to cover it.
And in some lighter news, I know this is normally your thing, but I guess I should mention it's National Cheese Day. Happy National Cheese Day, everybody.
From moo to mozzarella, happy National Cheese Day. It's my daughter's favorite food, Jill. When I bring out cheese to her, no matter the cheese, she just starts waving her arms. And so it's also, I think, my wife's favorite food as well. The people, they love the cheese. I grew up next to Wisconsin there, just south of the border of Wisconsin, our cheese state, where a quarter of all our cheese comes. So make a point today, everybody, unless you're lactose intolerant. Go get some cheese.
I'm so obsessed with Parmesan cheese that I will eat food just to have the Parmesan cheese with it. So I'll have soup, but it's more like, could I get some soup with my Parmesan cheese, please?
That's so funny you say that, because until I met my wife, I had never experienced that. Literally, Alex will ask the waiters for more Parmesan, and they'll bring a little bowl of Parmesan. She's like, no, I want you to bring wherever that bowl came from, the larger bowl, just put it on the table. And some of them understand. Yeah. Some of them are like, what is happening? But yeah, no, Parmesan, it's actually one of our goals, I think, is to get to the city of Parma for to get to the Mecca of Parmesan cheese at some point. Maybe we make it a family trip, a joint family trip, Jill.
My daughter happens to also be obsessed with Parmesan cheese. We are in.
You got to do a girls trip. Olivia, yeah. Alex, you, and Alex. So both Alexes.
We don't do wineries. We go for the cheese.
Go to Italy, eat some pasta, but just mainly just eat Parmesan.
I'm there, Moshe. Say no more.
Jill, we should note that Cheddar continues to be the most popular cheese in America when we look at the numbers. But I know you guys are doing your best to try to get Parmesan up there.
Let's get to some news, a lot of it. President Trump ran on being tough on immigration and the border. So we're going to look at some of his deportation numbers and why the Trump administration is split on a strategy going forward. Overseas, a new aid program in Gaza, how it's going and why it's so controversial. The latest in the Boulder, Colorado attack, ICE has now detained the suspect's family, what his daughter recently said about the United States. And the latest on the big, beautiful budget bill, President Trump's bestie, or maybe former bestie, Elon Musk, calling it a disgusting abomination.
Yeah, Elon, just a few days removed from leaving the White House administration, letting loose over on his X social media page.
And a man from Texas arrested and accused of trespassing at Mar-a-Lago, who in the Trump family he told police he wanted to marry.
Yeah, scary incident down there.
Some business news, Moshe, from where you are right now. Walmart's headquarters, the retailer quietly raising prices, even as the president is telling retailers to, quote, eat the tariffs. And Moshe, Walmart's certainly not alone.
No, not alone. No, people are noticing prices going up at a number of major retailers right now.
And you might be drinking a cup of coffee right now as you're listening to the podcast. Some good news, it could have a long-term perk. Get it?
I get it, Jill. I get it. I always like when the studies come out that show that coffee and wine are good for you. It's annoying when the studies come out about coffee and wine being bad for you. So today, we bring you a coffee is good for you study.
Some of my favorite bits on Instagram are the influencers or the people who do these voiceovers who will be like, did you know if you cut coffee from your diet and replace it with green tea, you will have removed 98% of happiness from your life. And it's like, thank God.
Wait for it.
Yeah. And Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, a huge anniversary for one of your faves, the boss. Not Tony Danza as in Who's the Boss, but like the other boss from the 80s, 90s, and today.
I think we hang out too much because I swear I was about to make a Who's the Boss joke.
Everyone of a certain age will get it, and anyone under like 35 will be like, who was the boss?
What are you talking about?
By
the way, they wouldn't get either reference. Bruce Springsteen, or maybe they'd get Bruce.
Maybe get the Bruce reference, but not the Tony Danza reference.
Who's the boss? The Tony Danza has a shorter shelf life. All right, let's start with immigration and the Trump administration's push to increase deportations. We got some new numbers yesterday. Federal immigration officials were able to accelerate President Trump's mass deportation program in May. But the pace is still lower than what the president and some of his closest allies want. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, is now averaging about 1,600 arrests a day. That is up from 656 earlier this year. Trump advisor Stephen Miller, who has been the brainchild behind the plan, previously set a goal of 3,000 arrests a day. According to a report in the conservative Washington Examiner, he reportedly eviscerated ICE officials in late May, taking them to task in a meeting for low deportation numbers.
Yeah, he reportedly even called for them to start going to Home Depot parking lots, 7-Elevens, saying, get aggressive here, to which officials responded apparently in this meeting. I thought you just want to focus on criminals, but Miller looking to basically go after everybody.
Right. Some Trump officials like border czar Tom Homan, they favor targeting criminals. Others like Miller want any undocumented immigrants arrested, which is what would need to happen if they reach the targets that he has set. ICE data from April, which is the latest month we have available, shows that over 17,200 people were deported that month. That is a nearly 30% increase compared to the same month last year. It was the first time since Trump took office that ICE deported more people than under the Biden administration during the same period the year prior. But not sure if we should read too much into that. Part of the reason is because border crossings are so low. So agents have struggled to match deportation levels that were seen during the Biden administration, because I believe that during the Biden administration, they counted somebody as deported even if they caught them right near the border.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately, it's apples and oranges here. With border crossings down 95%, the arrests and deportations that Trump is engaged in is people who are now living in Massachusetts or Illinois or Texas or California, versus just sending people back across the border. But ultimately, for people like Stephen Miller, for people like President Trump, it is all about the numbers, is all about their promise to deport millions of people here with undocumented status.
And the federal government has been most successful in arresting undocumented immigrants in states where local law enforcement agencies have been the most cooperative in rounding up immigrants. It's happening through deals known as 287G agreements.
Yeah, that's effectively where local police or state police in various states, particularly red states, are working with the feds. So we're talking here about Florida, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia. Nearly half of the agreements with local and county police and various local law enforcement are in Florida, about 14% in Texas and 5% in Georgia. So basically, Florida, Texas, and Georgia make up about 2/3 of the agreements there. And that is why the administration has been getting so aggressive lately when it comes to what they call sanctuary cities or sanctuary states, where the states or local authorities do not cooperate with the feds. One of those places, Massachusetts. And that's where earlier this week, ICE's Boston field office reported its largest ever enforcement action. Nearly 1,500 individuals, they say, across the month of May, were detained and are being held who were living in Massachusetts. They say that half of them, just over 700 of them, had some degree of, quote, criminality. It still has to be adjudicated by a judge. It also means, of course, that half of them don't have a degree of criminality, but nonetheless, they're looking to pick people up. We posted a couple of these clips on Instagram, Jill. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments, and a couple of the posts, thousands of comments from people reacting to that press conference, reacting to the arrest there. In particular, it's interesting because, ICE emphasizes some of the people they picked up in Massachusetts with horrendous criminal backgrounds, rape, kidnapping, attempted murder, a variety of crimes, and they tried to highlight those. But then you have the governor of the state of Massachusetts and others in the state who are highlighting the fact that some of the people they picked up have no degree of criminality. That includes an 18-year-old high school student who was picked up on his way to volleyball practice over the weekend. No criminal background. He was brought to the U.S. by his family from Brazil at the age of 5, but apparently they have been living undocumented status. This has been interesting, Jill. We talked about this on the Instagram account a few months ago, and some people said that in many families, the parents might not tell the kids that they're there illegally, and the kids don't find that out till they apply to college, till they try to get a driver's license, till at some point they deal with government authorities, and they're like, you're not here legally. You might want to talk to your parents about that. But in this case, now they're being detained and arrested. So this kid, just about to graduate high school, going again to volleyball practice, he was picked up. ICE is defending that, saying they were looking for his father, and he was driving his father's car. His father apparently has been going over the speed limit, had a bunch of tickets, and so they picked up the kid. They're saying, we're looking for the father. As of yesterday, the father still hadn't shown his face to authorities while his kid remains in jail. There's a lot of protests locally there in Milford, Massachusetts. And the ICE authorities saying, well, ultimately, he had no criminal background. We weren't looking for him. We were looking for the dad, but he's here, has undocumented status, so we're going to pick him up nonetheless. And that's a big difference here between previous administrations, including the first Trump administration and this administration, where they are picking people up with no criminal background because they're here with undocumented status. And again, that's the nature of the debate you described there between Stephen Miller and ICE. Jill, another place where you're seeing this debate play out, San Diego. We posted a video of this on the Instagram account yesterday as well. This was from a Friday raid in San Diego of 2 restaurants. Apparently, ICE thought that there were a couple dozen undocumented migrants working in a couple notable, well-known restaurants in San Diego. They conducted a raid during dinner service on Friday. What they thought were a couple dozen, turns out they were working off of 5-year-old information. They ended up arresting 4 people who were employed by the restaurant during the raid. But they came in guns a-blazing, dressed in military fatigues, 20 officers. And what was interesting and notable here is you saw community members push back and start to yell shame, start to yell obscenities, start to lob things at the ICE agents. Jill, take a listen to the bit of audio from the confrontations that happened on the streets of San Diego on Friday.
Shame! 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 That's right! That's right! Back the up!
Jill, it was remarkable to see those pictures there of the people kind of pushing back on ICE there. And that's really depending on where you go community by community. You're seeing some who have issues, have criminals, are have been begging the authorities to deal with the migrant crisis there. And then other communities, particularly in some of these sanctuary areas, who are pushing back here, saying, I understand going after the criminals, but some of these people, they've been working locally for years. They take jobs, they do jobs that it is very hard to find Americans willing to do. And in many cases, they're paying taxes.
All right, now to the Middle East, where it was another day of chaos yesterday near one of the new aid distribution sites run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. A refresher, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, is a new Israeli-American initiative to get much-needed aid to Palestinians in Gaza. It is a system that the group says is designed to circumvent Hamas, and it comes after a roughly 3-month land blockade of aid to the region. American private contractors oversee the handout of aid in cardboard boxes while Israel secures the area. But for the past 3 days, there are reports that Palestinians who were headed to the distribution site have come under fire, with many killed and others injured. On Tuesday, Israel admitted that it did fire near crowds of Palestinians walking toward the new food distribution site in southern Gaza. A military spokesperson saying, quote, "We fired warning shots toward a group of people who posed a threat to our forces far from where they were supposed to be. Warning shots were fired not to hit anyone. According to the claims, people were hit, so we are investigating, but it will take time."
Jill, there's a very specific designated path that people need to be on, just given the larger conditions in Gaza. And so when they noticed this group that wasn't listening to them, that was taking another path and wasn't responding to the warning fire, it appears things may have escalated.
Meanwhile, the Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, says that at least 27 people were killed. Media outlets like the BBC are quoting witnesses who say that they were fired on by tanks, drones, and helicopters. So unclear exactly what was happening there. Now, there was another incident on Sunday. The Gaza Health Ministry, again run by Hamas, saying that Israel opened fire on crowds near the distribution site, killing at least 23 people and injuring dozens more, including kids. In that case, though, Israel says, quote, "This did not happen." The IDF acknowledged firing warning shots at Palestinians about half a mile from the aid site before it opened for distribution, but dismissed claims that it happened within the aid site during the hours that it was open. An IDF spokesperson saying this week it was claimed that the IDF fired on civilians at the aid distribution site. This is a totally false report, and it is echoing Hamas propaganda.
Jill, amid all this chaos, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation announced that it will be closing all its sites today, trying to reset things, prepare safer access routes to distribution sites, given what has unfolded here the past few days.
Right, and there's a lot of uncertainty. The IDF has been taking aims at the media for what they say is parroting Hamas claims. To that end, at least when it comes to the incident on Sunday, the BBC says that it analyzed a video posted by Al Jazeera, which claimed to show Israeli forces opening fire on Palestinians near the distribution site. But the BBC says it has determined that the video is not accurate, and they used geolocation technology to determine that it was actually from a different town about 3 miles from the aid site. Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, he put out a statement saying, quote, "Without verification of any source other than Hamas and its collaborators, the New York Times, CNN, and the Associated Press reported that a number of people seeking to receive humanitarian boxes from the Gaza Humanitarian Fund were shot or killed by Israeli Defense Forces. These reports were false. The only source for these misleading, exaggerated, and utterly fabricated stories came from Hamas sources, which he says are designed to fan the flames of anti-Semitic hate that is arguably contributing to the violence against Jews in the U.S. And he's calling for an immediate retraction from these news outlets as he's connecting the misinformation to violence against Jews here in the U.S.
Yeah, it was interesting, Jill, also on Tuesday afternoon, you saw the Washington Post admit that post that it put out over the weekend contained inaccuracies. They said that early versions of their article didn't meet Washington Post fairness standards because they didn't make it clear they were attributing a lot of the information to Hamas. And so you have all these Hamas numbers, which can't be verified in terms of how many people died on Sunday, how many people died on Monday, how many people died and wounded on Tuesday. And it can't be verified on the ground there. And ultimately, it's not an accident here. Hamas very much wants this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation to fail. As far as they're concerned, they very much like the previous system that was managed by the UN. Also, who liked that system? The UN. The UN was in charge. The UN doesn't want to cooperate here because they've basically been pushed out. Hamas was able to basically do whatever it wanted to do while the UN was there. A number of Hamas officials actually worked in UNRWA, in the UN organization in Gaza. So Hamas very much wants complete chaos. They want this thing to completely fail. They want to embarrass the Israelis here, and they don't care how they do it. And ultimately, they want things to return to the previous regime, and one that'll ensure that they can continue to go back to what they were doing, which also entails taking aid, reselling the aid. I mean, Hamas, notably, is one of the richest terrorist organizations in the world because they make a good penny off of the aid that comes in for free and they sell, and they tax people on it. So one of the challenges the Israelis and Americans have had here is just trying to manage this aid process. They've only tried to get one of these locations going here. They're supposed to do more of them, and they've had so much difficulty, as I just mentioned, they're actually shutting it down today to try to reset things and try to figure out what they can do to create routes that prevent the chaos from unfolding and, unfortunately, civilians dying here. Now, they have said that over the course of the first week or so of this, they have distributed more than 7 million meals. And so they are saying this has been successful despite the chaos, but the optics here are terrible. And so they have to figure out what to do. But at the same time, Jill, as the Israelis complain here, and you saw Mike Huckabee, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, complain here, ultimately, it is very challenging to get verifiable facts on the ground right now in Gaza.
Right, Moshe, we were actually talking about this on our morning meeting yesterday. We have both been part of coverage from war zones, even Iraq in 2003, Western journalists could get on the ground and do their own reporting.
This is a very rare situation unfolding here in Gaza over the last 20 months, where effectively the only way to get in as a journalist is as an embed with the Israeli military. There's no roaming to be happening there. Many of the fixers, they call them fixers, or local freelancers in Gaza who previously did work for Western media, either have been evacuated by their organizations, have lost their homes and dealing with other matters. Some have been killed in the fighting as well. And so in many cases, Western news media must rely not on local reporters anymore, but on random civilians, on activists, on aid organizations, people who either have an agenda or are worried about what Hamas might do to them if they report things that are negative towards them. And so it makes it increasingly difficult here to get information. Now, the Israelis will say officially, we can't allow journalists in because it's very unsafe for them. Now, journalists have experience covering war zones, whether, as you mentioned, Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine. They roam about, they wear press jackets, they try to alert the militaries involved as to their whereabouts. Now, ultimately, Gaza is a unique situation. It's the size of Philadelphia. It's got the tunnels. And so the Israelis officially say this for the safety. But, ultimately, journalists are like, come on, we cover war zones and we take responsibility for our own safety. I think the bigger concern, what the Israelis won't say officially, is they don't want them dealing with media-savvy Hamas. They don't want them betting with Hamas. They don't want them in the tunnels. They don't want them potentially being put in situations where Hamas offers them interviews or access to the hostages. It could create a lot of challenges there. And then beyond that, the Israelis want free access to be able to take out terror leaders and have their way with what they think they need to do in Gaza. And so say they get intel that Mohammed Sinwar, who they killed last week, right? The leader, that, he's somewhere and they need to take him out. And then they see on the ground that there's like a Reuters photographer and a Washington Post reporter there. What are they going to do? Are they going to take out the terror leader and then deal with the aftermath of killing Western journalists? They don't want to have to deal with that. So they have blocked things out. But what that means is when you block out Western reporters, then you complain that the Western reporters aren't getting the story straight. Well, you can't have it both ways. And I will say that there is definitely responsibility there, and the Israelis have to come up with a better media strategy. Jill, there are times where the Israeli military is constantly clarifying itself. There are times in this war where the Israeli military said we weren't responsible for something that they then later admit, nope, actually that was us. And so that's been an issue here. But I will say there is responsibility here for the media organizations who know 20 months in that stuff coming from the Gaza Health Ministry is Hamas. And in many cases, they make a lot of stuff up. And sometimes you have to retract it, as in the Washington Post, as in the BBC, that what you report matters. And so I will say that I'm not absolving blame here for major media organizations that still feel like they're in this speed race, that suddenly they see a headline break or something. Hamas says, there's 26 dead and 200 injured here, and it's been 7 minutes. By the way, there's actual examples of that. The BBC and the New York Times and CBS News, all these guys should know better than to just repeat that, copy paste, and or maybe you repeat that, but you provide disclosure. Hey, we're not on the ground to verify this. This is what the Hamas-run ministry is claiming here. We don't have pictures to back that up. And I think that is what this situation requires, because ultimately, if you keep repeating things, then a few days later you correct them, nobody sees the correction. And so I think that the Israelis have to figure out a better strategy. The Israelis have to allow journalists access to this place after 20. Jill, even during the ceasefire, journalists weren't given free access to Gaza. They have shut the place down. And so ultimately here, you're creating a situation where misinformation is going to be rife.
Moshe, I think that you make a great point. The situation in some ways was created by Israel, but at the same time, you do have journalists, particularly Western media outlets, that really, after so many months of war, to your point, should really be using some better judgment. There was one example that was early on in the war. It was actually in October of 2023 when there was some sort of major blast at a hospital. I don't know if you remember this.
I do, the Al-Ali hospital. And it wasn't at the hospital. It was in the parking lot across from the hospital.
That's right. And Hamas immediately came out with a very specific number of people who were killed, saying that it was from an Israeli attack. But when the dust settled, literally, it turned out that it was actually a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket that had misfired, went back into Gaza and hit the parking lot of the hospital. But at that point, the story had already gone basically around the world twice, as they say, and it's hard to bring it back in.
And by the way, that example is interesting because it also led to riots in Lebanon, in Jordan, on the U.S. Embassy, on Israeli consulates, in Turkey as well. I mean, what you report matters. It can have reaction, mean life or death for people, or in some cases, lead people to get so angry that they might do something. And so, ultimately, there's a lot of responsibility here on the part of the media. And again, it's just disclosure purposes, right? We can't get in because of the Israelis. This is what Hamas is saying. We can't verify it. We don't have any photos of it. We don't have any videos of it. We're not at the hospital. I think that there is a transparency required here. And by the way, that doesn't just apply to this war. Ukraine, Russia is also a situation where both sides are putting out random numbers. They won't discuss their casualties. There's a whole bunch of issues there as well. Now, at least in the case of that war, journalists are free to roam about, and you can kind of verify it with folks. You don't have that in Gaza. So it's a situation we'll continue to monitor here, and we did a post over on Instagram about it.
All right, time for the speed read from CBS News. Family members of the man charged with Sunday's attack in Boulder, Colorado, have been taken into custody. A DHS official said that 6 people, Mohammed Solomon's wife and children, were taken into ICE custody and will now be processed under expedited removal, which allows the government to deport migrants in the United States illegally without holding a court hearing. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem made that announcement on X, calling the suspect, Mohammed Solomon, an illegal alien and terrorist. He is facing multiple counts of attempted murder and a federal hate crime charge for the attack that injured 12 people at a march supporting Israeli hostages. The 45-year-old is accused of using Molotov cocktails and a makeshift flamethrower in Sunday's attack, burning multiple victims. Noem said, quote, "We are investigating to what extent his family knew about this heinous attack, if they had knowledge of it, or if they provided support to it."
Yeah, they apparently caught the wife leaving their place. They'd been living in Colorado Springs, which is about 100 miles from Boulder, where he committed the attack. He's an Egyptian national. It appears the family also lived with him in Egypt. Some of the children were born in Egypt. He arrived in California in 2022 on a non-immigrant visa. Effectively a visa that's typically used for tourists. It expired in 2023. He also filed an asylum claim, trying to stay in the country, and that's what he's been hoping will keep him in the country, as his visas have officially expired here. There are various headlines coming from the feds here that they're looking to potentially deport the family ASAP. As part of this, we're still trying to learn the visa status of the children as well as the wife. Jill, we're also learning more about the daughter. There was some media coverage of one of the daughters. According to a profile of her in the Denver Gazette, she was considered one of the best and brightest high school seniors at her high school. You might remember we learned that he postponed this attack until after her high school graduation to allow her to graduate, apparently. It's not clear whether that was a discussion in the family or whether he just decided to do that on his own. But in these profiles, she says that she was born in Egypt, spent her life in Kuwait, and was inspired to pursue a career in medicine after watching what she calls the magic of surgery that allowed her father to walk again at some point. So we're learning some background here from her. She says in the profile that her family moved to the U.S. so she could pursue her dream in medicine, and that living in America has fundamentally changed her. I learned to adapt to new things, even if it was hard. I learned to work under pressure, improve rapidly in a short amount of time. It appears here her father may have brought her to America for her dream, but may have ended her dream in the process. Those comments were just a few weeks there before the attack. Apparently, he's been planning this for more than a year. He has said to authorities that he would do this again. I mean, Jill, the video here of just him yelling things as he brings his flamethrower is pretty remarkable. He actually dressed up as a gardener, so he wouldn't be noticed there in the park where these walkers, where the Jewish group was. But he apparently also lost his stomach to do more, because he actually prepared 18 Molotov cocktails. He only used 2 of them, had 16 standing by. And so it appears that he sort of, conducted part of the attack, but not everything that he had planned to do.
Okay, now to the latest with Elon Musk. This from the Washington Post. Democrats and Elon Musk agree on something for once. They hate President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Musk attacked the $4 trillion spending and tax bill as, quote, a disgusting abomination, posting on X, I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. He goes on to say that the bill will massively increase the budget deficit to $2.5 trillion and burden Americans with unsustainable debt. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has said that the package would increase the deficit by about $2.3 trillion. The bill, as it stands, would extend the president's 2017 tax cuts, eliminate tax on tips and overtime work, and also boost funding for immigration enforcement and the military. It'll also make cuts to Medicaid and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, and raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. Musk had previously said he didn't like the bill. With this language, I think it just takes things to a new level.
Yeah, well, the White House was asked about it. They sort of dismissed it. They're like, the president knows that Elon doesn't like the bill, but he loves his big, beautiful bill, and that's that. It is interesting that Elon, now that he's just a few days removed from the White House role after his sort of goodbye Oval Office meeting on Friday, feels comfortable doing this. I'm going through his X account as we speak here, and it's just like tweet after tweet after tweet after tweet. And everyone who replied to him, he's replying back to them with like 100 or thank you very much. I mean, Elon, it's funny the way that he like wrote it. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. Like this was like bubbling up inside him. He's like, I just got to let this out. Shame on you. And also, he's learning politics. He spent $300 million on Trump's election and supporting Republicans. And he's learning that politics is challenging and you don't get everything that you want and it requires compromise. And it's not just like being the CEO of your own company. It is interesting to see what he said. I don't think it changes the game much. Ultimately, the president here is trying to get this passed as quickly as possible. But certainly it does speak to some of the divisions here. It's not just a Democrat-Republican division. In the Senate in particular, where they're considering this legislation right now, you have a number of Republicans that have concerns about this bill. So it's not just Elon Musk. It's Rick Scott, the senator from Florida. It is Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky. It is a number of Republicans, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, a number of Republicans. Right now, this won't pass the Senate. They want to see cuts to this. And what's interesting here is you have Democrats saying, I agree with Elon Musk, like, yay, Elon Musk. But they, this is the thing. The only thing they agree on is they don't like the bill, but they don't like the bill for completely separate reasons. The things that Elon wants to cut out of the bill, Democrats would lose their minds. Elon wants to cut Medicare and Medicaid and all this other stuff much more significantly. And he just generally wants to see much less spending, all things Democrats want to spend on. And so it's interesting sort of seeing this come to Jesus for Democrats. They're like, oh my God, look at our debt. I'm like, where were you during Biden? And this is the game that is played every single time, where when Republicans have a Democrat in the White House, they're like, oh my God, the spending's out of control. And now Democrats have a Republican in the White House, are like, oh my God, the spending's out of control. And they can't lower taxes because that means less money to the government, which means the debt goes up. The bottom line is, and this is where Elon is right, this is not sustainable as a country. We're about to hit $1 trillion a year just in interest the government has to pay on all of the money we take out to keep the government running. So we're at 36, going on 37 trillion in debt here. We bring in about $6 million a year, $6 or $7 million a year as a government. We now spend $1 trillion of that just on the interest on our debt. And so this is a problem. No one can agree on the solution here, but you do have Republicans that feel, at least on the Senate side, they want to have a discussion with the White House and they want to cut some stuff from this bill.
And Motion, then you also have Democrats who are pretty much giddy, like Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. He actually retweeted Musk's post writing, I didn't think it was imaginable, but, and then in all caps, I agree with Elon Musk. And here he is speaking with reporters later on Tuesday.
If even Elon Musk, who's been part of the whole process and is Trump's buddy, says the bill is bad, you can imagine how bad this bill is. But
Moshe, you make a good point, which is that their beef with the bill is very different.
Yeah, come on, Chuck. I agree with Elon. Oh, okay. You know why Elon doesn't like the bill? Because he wants to cut everything you love about the bill. Stop. Let's move on.
Right. The enemy of your enemy isn't always your friend.
Right. It's just the agreement ends on just we don't like the bill. That's where the agreement ends.
From NBC News, a Texas man was arrested Tuesday accused of trespassing on President Trump's Palm Beach, Florida club. Police there say they responded at the Mar-a-Lago resort shortly after midnight and were met by Secret Service agents who detained Anthony Reyes, who is 23 years old. He allegedly told police he climbed a wall surrounding the property to, quote, spread the gospel to Trump and then marry Kai, an apparent reference to the president's 18-year-old granddaughter. She's the oldest daughter of Don Jr. Reyes was previously arrested and accused of trespassing on the property on New Year's Eve last year.
Yeah, so not his first trespass there. A scary situation. He was booked to the Palm Beach County Jail, told to have no contact with Trump or their family members. I think he has a bond set at $50,000. He has pleaded not guilty here. Mar-a-Lago officially has become a federally protected area by the Secret Service after that attempted assassination of the president last July in Pennsylvania. We should note Kai has like a very large social media following, and she's become very prominent in this administration on TikTok, on Instagram, has millions of followers, and so a scary incident for her.
Okay, now to some business news. Moshe, you were in Bentonville, Arkansas at Walmart's headquarters for their big shareholder meeting. And one issue that will certainly come up, the impact of tariffs. From the New York Post, Walmart has been quietly hiking prices on items from toys to office supplies, with some markups reportedly climbing more than 100%. And that is even though President Trump had demanded retailers, quote, eat the tariffs. Photos circulating online, particularly on the Walmart subreddit, have documented dramatic price hikes since the White House imposed a 145% tariff on imports from China in early April. They eventually lowered that to 30% last month. The price of toys, the bulk of which are made in China, have particularly been impacted. For example, a Jurassic World T-Rex rose from about $40 on April 27th to $55 on May 21st. That's about a 38% increase. A price tracking site shows the same item cost about $30 in November. The popular Etch-a-Sketch, that jumped from $15 to $25. That's about a 67% increase. The price of office supplies also surged. A roll of tape that previously sold for about $4, now costing about $10. That is a 134% spike. Heating pads also rose about 25%. The cost of a fishing reel surged about 45%. A Walmart spokesperson tells the New York Post, pricing fluctuations are a normal course of business and are influenced by a variety of factors. They say they are dedicated to managing inventory and reducing expenses to maintain everyday low prices. Nothing about the current environment changes our focus. In the last quarter, they say they had about 6,500 price reductions, which is 1,000 more than they had in the quarter prior.
Yeah, so as some prices go up, some prices are coming down. They say it was notable, Jill, and this is something we will follow up with them this week in Arkansas. One of their leaders said on CNBC, and this got a lot of attention last month, that the things that will receive the price increase are not necessarily things that directly come from China, but might be just based on demand. Things that they know they can raise prices on because people need it. And so we will dive into that with them this week. But I will say that it's not just Walmart. There are prices being noticed going up at Home Depot, at Target as well. And they're dealing with a situation. If you're a company that depends on China, you have those tariffs at 145% or so. They're still at 30% or 54+%. I mean, you still have pretty significant tariffs here. Now, Trump, as we've told you, has demanded that Walmart and other companies, quote, eat the tariffs rather than pass along costs to consumers. We should note Walmart posted $15 billion in profits last year, but ultimately they have shareholders and they're looking for growth and they're looking for profits like all other companies. So the idea that you have a president calling on companies to eat the tariffs and cut into their own profits is pretty unprecedented, especially for a Republican president, where typically Republican presidents until now have been very free market. You know, let the markets dictate things. We're not going to dictate as a government what companies should do for consumers. So we'll watch how this all unfolds. Important stat here, about 60% of the products that Walmart sells come from domestic suppliers. They have been trying to reduce their dependence on China for a number of years now.
And finally, some good news for anyone who enjoys a morning brew. And we're talking about coffee, not beer, Moshe.
What are you
In
implying,
case I
Jill?
wasn't clear.
Morning brew, as in coffee brew, yes.
A new study has found a correlation between drinking coffee and living a longer and healthier life. Scientists presented a study at the American Society for Nutrition. They followed 47,000 female nurses over 30 years, starting in the 1970s. When the researchers checked again with the nurses in 2016, they found a correlation between how much caffeinated coffee the women typically drank during middle age and their likelihood of aging healthily, meaning that they lived to at least 70 without major chronic diseases and with good physical, mental, and cognitive function. So tell us what they found, Moshe.
Jill, we should note that coffee is known for its antioxidant properties, its anti-inflammatory effects, and it reduces the risk for chronic disease. We've told you about those studies in the past. In the case of this study, the women who qualified as, quote, healthy agers were found to consume an average of 315 milligrams of caffeine daily, mostly from coffee. That's about the same amount of coffee you would get in a grande cup from Starbucks, just to put that in context there. Decaffeinated coffee and tea, sorry folks, did not have the same correlation. And soda was shown to actually have a 20 to 26% reduced chance of healthy aging. So if you want your caffeine from Coca-Cola, it's not shown to work for you, though at the same time, Warren Buffett is in his 90s and he drinks a Coca-Cola every day. So, I guess there are exceptions to the rule here. Now, there are limits to this study. It only followed women, mostly white. As we said, they followed nurses around, but I think we can extrapolate this data out based on some of the other studies that we've seen here. We are waiting for this study to be peer reviewed, and ultimately, it's not clear what they all took in their coffee. Are they taking the cream? Are they doing sugar? Are they doing Splenda? And if that had an effect.
Moshe, I don't need the peer review. This is fine.
You're good. Jill's going to review the study. Looks good to me. I'll have coffee.
Do I count as a peer?
A media peer. I don't know. I don't know if you're a medical research professional, but we'll take the study to the bank. All right. On this day in history, 1896, we begin with Henry Ford test driving what he called the quadricycle. It was essentially a frame fitted with 4 bicycle wheels. Jill, I'm glad we live in this age. The quadricycle did not look like it was like a very effective thing, like going off the side of the road. Like 4 bicycle wheels. It's basically a wagon. That's where Henry Ford started.
I'm happy we have either a car or a bicycle. Right. I can't handle
not the car
hybrid.
Bicycle. I don't the car bicycle, but credit to Henry Ford. He had to start somewhere, and that's where he started with his quadricycle on this day in history.
We've got 4 wheels and pedals. Figure it out.
Yeah. All right. On this day in 1919, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, granting women the right to vote, was passed by Congress and sent to the states for ratification. Easy reminder there. In 1919, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution passed. On this day in 1977, the VHS tape debuted at the Consumer Electronics Show.
Many still exist in my parents' house. I don't know about yours.
I'm sure my parents still have some. Jill, is there still like a VCR to play said VHS tapes?
There is, actually. Yeah.
Have you shown the kids? Like, this is how mom used to watch movies.
I should. I should.
You should. You should make them watch a movie on it and then like make them rewind. Be kind, rewind. And like see like how they deal with that process, because now like I realize it too. Like Olivia, like I pull something up on YouTube and she's like, "No, I want that one. No, I want that one." I'm like, if you only knew, kiddo, what we went through back in the day.
Well, the irony is that because my daughter is so not used to commercials, because you're able,
they freak out about commercials.
No, she loves them, and then she quotes them to me every time. Occasionally, she'll catch a glimpse of one, and she's like, hook, line, and sinker. I want that. Can you get me some? I'm like, where did you even learn about that? And then she knows the tagline. So they work. All right, brands.
They're the next generation. Don't worry about them. They're going to watch the commercials too. All right, we end here with a bit of music history. On this day in 1984, your man Bruce Springsteen released his 7th studio album. It was called Born in the USA, one of his best-selling albums of all time. Born in the USA gives us also Dancing in the Dark, as well as, of course, Born in the USA. 7 top 10 hits on the Billboard charts from that album. And on the same 2001, Avril Lavigne, one of the many Canadian singers that have crushed it, Jill. Avril Lavigne released her debut studio album, Let Go, and included Complicated, and Skater Boy. She came out strong.
So when you think Canadian singers, Michael Bublé, Celine Dion, Bare
Justin
Naked
Bieber,
Ladies, is that
Shania Twain, The Weeknd, Drake.
Oh, I didn't realize The Weeknd was Canadian.
Yeah, Bryan Adams, Nelly Furtado, Sarah McLachlan, Carly Rae Jepsen. The Canadians have really over-indexed, and I probably haven't even got to all of them. The Canadians are definitely going to message me being like, you missed XYZ. But you guys, we're giving you credit. We're giving you major kudos, Canada. You guys have really contributed. Oh, Alanis Morissette.
Moshe, I am impressed here with this knowledge. You just rattled off about 12
So I will
singers.
tell you that as sort of, if it wasn't for the Canadian election recently, I wouldn't know all of these singers, but I made a point in our Canadian election coverage on Instagram of featuring Canadian singers for every single slide. So I had to do my homework on Canadian singers. So it's not like Moshe just like remembers Canadian singers because the Canadian election was last month, and like I made a point of like trying to feature Canadian singers and like remind folks that like as you learn about Canadian politics, it's what we try to do on the Instagram page. Try to like teach you things and then teach you other things and give you good talkers for friends and family.
I feel better because I felt like you were just naming like an insane number of singers.
You're like, Moshe, why? Do you just like memorize a list of Canadian singers every day? Like, what are you doing?
Like, what? Like, you might have issues. I don't know if this is like cool or freaky.
It would definitely be freaky. Test me in a year and I'll tell you who I remember from that list.
Like, why do you know all this? All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Mo News Podcast. If you like what you hear, share this with your friends. It helps us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News Podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.